All right, today is chapters 17 and 18. So I'm going to read 17 and 18, and then I want you guys to work on a summary of what we've learned so far in our book. Just what's happened in our book so far. So 17 and 18 are today. Min Lee gulped as she walked toward the gray stone wall of the city. As she passed the two stone lions marking the entrance, she glanced behind her. Even though she only saw the trees and shadows, she knew the dragon was hidden there. Quickly, she pushed through the doors of the gate, leaving the forest and the dragon behind her. As the gate closed, Min Lee stared. The streets were crowded and bustling. The city seemed to be bubbling with people like boiling rice. Vendors selling fruit and shoes called out their wares while people rushed past. Some pushing wheelbarrows or balancing baskets on shoulders. A large, muddy water buffalo, led by a boy, perhaps a year or two older than Min Lee, wandered through and was ignored as a commonplace occurrence. "Watch out, little mouse," a gruff man said behind her, his baskets of cabbages driving her into the crowd. As she was shoved and pushed, Min Lee grabbed the arms of the boy with the water buffalo. "Hi," she said. "If I want to see the king, where do I go?" "The king?" the boy asked at her at surprise. "You'd have to go to the palace." "How do I go to the palace?" Min Lee asked. "Just follow the black stones," the boy said, pointing at the road paved with polished bricks. "They'll lead you to the city." "Wait," Min Lee said. "Isn't this the city? The palace is in another city?" "You must not be from around here," the boy laughed. "The city of bright moonlight is divided into two. This is the outer city where anyone can live and travel. The inner city is where the palace is, where the king and officials live. You have to have permission to go into the inner city. If you don't, you're not going to be able to see the king or the palace. There are thousands of guards protecting the inner city. They won't let anyone through without permission." "I'll find a way," Min Lee said confidently. "Thanks." And she let go of the boy's arm and headed toward the black road. However, as Min Lee got closer to the inner city, she realized the boy was right. The red walls of the inner city loomed tall and forbidding, and every gold-studded gate door was guarded by at least 2 soldiers, their silver armor reflecting in the hot sun. It would be a daunting task to enter the inner city, much less find the palace and the king. "But I must," Min Lee said to herself. Regardless, the guards' faces were stern and hard, and she quaked inside. "If I ask to go in," Min Lee thought, as she hung back amongst the fruit stands and fish vendors, "they'll ignore me or force me away with their swords, and either way I won't be able to see the king. What should I do?" "Not as easy as you thought, huh?" a voice said next to her. Min Lee turned and saw the buffalo boy standing next to her. Min Lee gave him a wry look. Boys, she thought to herself, always thinking they know everything. Still, she had to admit he was right. She had no idea how she would see the king. They must let people into the inner city sometimes, Min Lee said. "They do," the boy said. "Once a year at the Moon Festival, they open the gates to everyone." "When's the Moon Festival?" Min Lee asked. "Already happened," the boy said. "You'll have to wait until next year." Min Lee bit her lip in frustration. What was she going to do? "I don't know why you want to go in there so badly," the boy said. "The buildings and clothes are nicer, but the people? A bunch of puffed up frogs." At the Moon Festival, one of the stablemen wanted to order me around and thought he could trick me into thinking he was the king. But when I asked why he wasn't wearing a golden dragon, he knew his prank wasn't going to work. Did he think I was stupid? Everyone knows a golden dragon is always and only worn by kings and the emperor. The people in there think we're a bunch of dumb oxen. The buffalo beside the boy gave a snort at that. "Sorry," the boy said, patting the buffalo on the nose. "You know I didn't mean that." But by the time the inner city guards had seen them lingering by the gate, "You there, kids," one of them barked. "Move along." "Come on," the boy said, tugging Min Lee's sleeve. "Let's go." Minley followed him and the buffalo. "Where are you going?" Minley asked. "I'm going home," he said. "You can come too if you want." And since Minley had no place else to go, she did. Chapter 18. Minley followed the boy through the maze of streets and alleyways for what seemed like a long time. If it wasn't for the big buffalo that always was in view, Minley would have easily lost him many times. "Not too far now," the boy said to her. Minley realized that the boy lived very far from the inner city. The road was no longer stone, but dirt. Even from a distance, she could see that the outer city wall was cracked and broken. "I live over here," the boy said, pointing, and Minley looked down a muddy path that led to a shabby, rickety hut that looked as if the first strong wind would blow it away. The boy brought the buffalo right into the hut, and Minley went after. She looked around the small, meager home. The only furnishings Minley could see were 2 wooden crates and a rough stool. On one side of the hut, a crude metal gate stood in the fireplace with a well-worn pot on it. The other half of the hut was divided into 2 piles of dry grass. Minley watched as the buffalo went directly to one pile and lay down. The boy gave it an affectionate slap on the side and dragged the rough wooden stool across the floor to her. "Here, have a seat," he said as he sprawled onto the other pile of grass. "And tell me why you want to go to the palace so much." "It's not the palace," Minley said as she sat on the stool. "I want to see the king." And she told the buffalo boy the whole story. She saw his face wrinkle with disbelief when she talked about the fish, and he shook his head when she talked about the dragon, but he didn't interrupt. "I don't know how you're going to see the king," the boy told her when she finished. "Even if you do see him, I doubt you'll be able to ask for a borrowed line, especially when you don't even know what it is." "But I have to," Minley said. "There must be a way." "Well, I always think better after I've eaten. Let's have dinner." While he fried the plain bamboo shoots in the pot over the fireplace, Minley looked around the bare room. "Do you live by yourself?" she asked. "Uh-huh," the boy nodded. "My parents died 4 years ago. Ever since then, it's just been me and the buffalo." He spoke almost carelessly, without anger or self-pity. Suddenly, Minley thought about her own home, the wood floor always swept by Ma, the extra blanket Ba put over her when the wind blew cold, and she felt a strange tightness in her throat. The boy finished cooking and pushed the cooked bamboo, like thinly sliced pieces of yellow wood, onto a plate. He only had 1 plate, so he set it on the stool next to the 3 peaches Minley had left, and both sat cross-legged on the ground. She took out her chopsticks. He only had 1 pair of those as well, and each picked and ate with the stool as a table and the single plate between them. "You don't have any aunts or uncles?" Minley asked. "Other family or friends?" "Well," the boy said, tossed a peach to the buffalo, then hesitated. "I do have 1 friend," and Minley was surprised to see his face change unexpectedly. The sharpness of his expression softened like a flower blossoming, his small smile gentle. "Who is it?" Minley asked. The story of the buffalo boy's friend. "Sometimes during hot summer days there is not enough water for my buffalo, so I like to take him out of the city into the surrounding forest to drink in the stream there. One day I brought him to the forest, and he kept pulling and pushing me away from the stream. No matter what I did, he refused to go in my direction. So finally I just let him lead the way, and he brought me to a part of the forest I had never seen before, a part I don't think anyone from the city has ever seen before. The trees seemed to reach the clouds. The green grass felt like a silk blanket. But the most beautiful things there were 7 girls swimming in it. When the girls saw me and the buffalo come through the trees, they screamed, jumped out of the water, grabbed their towels, and ran away. They moved so quickly it seemed like they had all disappeared into the sky. All except for one, that is. One girl stayed in the water and stared at me with scared eyes. Her hair floated around her like a midnight halo, and her white face looked like a star in the sky. "Hello," I said. You're Buffalo," she said. Her voice was like a flute notes in the air. "He's sitting on my towel." "Oh," I said, and I quickly pushed him over on the ground. Crushed and a little muddy was a blue towel. As I lifted it, the softness made me ashamed of my roughed hands. "Here," I said, bringing the towel to the edge of the lake. "Thank you," she said. She was my age, but she was prettier than any girl I had ever seen before. Even paintings of princesses were ugly compared to her. "I didn't mean to scare you," I said. "My buffalo was just thirsty." "I guess so," she said. She laughed like tinkling bells and watched my big lumbering buffalo make his way to the water. "I can't believe my sisters just left me like that. I'm the youngest too. They're supposed to watch me. But I'm glad they didn't, because now I can talk to you. Tell me about you. Does your buffalo go with you everywhere?" And just like that, we became good friends. She wanted to know everything about me and wasn't snobbish or anything. In fact, a lot of the time she sighed and she wished she had my freedom. "I have to go before they miss me," she sighed. "I wish I could stay here. Where I live, I'm not allowed to do anything. There's always someone watching, telling me what to do, and it's kind of lonely." "Well, visit me," I told her. "We can have lots of fun together." "I'll try," she promised. And she kept her promise. Like she said, it was hard for her to get away, but every night on the full moon, when she visits her grandfather, she stops here. Sometimes she can only stay for a little while. Sometimes she can stay for hours. Whenever I see her, we laugh enough to last for the month. She's my best friend, and someday when we're old enough, I'm going to talk her into staying here forever. All right, that's the end of the story of her friend. "And she should be coming tonight," the buffalo boy said, and his smile was bright and broad. "Oh, can I meet her?" Minley said. It was funny how the buffalo boy's whole manner changed when he talked about her. His vaguely mocking attitude and tough expression washed away when he lit up like a lantern. She was glad the boy had someone in his life other than the buffalo. The boy looked troubled. "She's really shy around other people, and I think she's afraid if anyone sees her, her family might find out that she stops here instead of going straight to her grandfather's. They're really strict with her." "I won't bother her then," Minley said. "Do you want me to leave?" "No, you can just stay with the buffalo," he said. She told me the last time that this visit would have to be fast anyway. She was behind on her work, so they will expect her back quickly. "Work?" Minley asked. "What does she do?" "She weaves and spins thread," the boy said. "That's what she brings to her grandfather when she visits. Thread that she spins. Hey, I know. I'll ask her how you can see the king. She'll know." "How will a weaving girl know about the king?" Minley asked. "Does she live in the inner city?" "No, she lives far away," the boy said vaguely, "but she knows lots of things." Minley shrugged. It didn't seem likely to her that a friend of the buffalo boy would know how she could see the king. But as she didn't have any ideas of her own, she would hope. All right, that's the end of 17 and 18. I want you guys to now go and work on a summary. Remember, a summary is not every single detail. Just think of the most important things from our story so far, and then come back next week for more.